Hey, welcome back to the Guardian Project podcast. This is episode 95, and I'm your host, Andy. And for this podcast, I only do practical research.
Only practical?
Only practical. I don't do the difficult research. No, I do a lot of difficult research. Listen, it fit really well as an intro, and Strixhaven gave me so many good intros, okay? I gotta take them where I can get them.
That's true. I mean, I'm sure your next intro will be more than just a fractal of this one. And this week, I wanted to come up with a good pun about Cody. I was bound to come up with something.
Oh, bound, because it's a book.
Also, I'm Mike. I forgot to say my name. Hey, everybody.
Please listen carefully.
You're the other host of our show, and
Sure
this
I
is the
am.
podcast where we talk about all things Magic Gathering.
But mostly Commander. So before we begin, we wanted to talk about a couple news updates. So there was a product delay for Strixhaven that was announced by Wizards of the Coast. So for Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand, unfortunately, due to shipping delays, the pre-release is going to be now combined with the release date of April 23rd for all of your products. Additionally, for Thailand, Strixhaven School of Mages bundles will release approximately mid-May, so you're going to see some delays there. And then for the United States and Canada, we are also seeing some unexpected production issues for draft booster boxes and Japanese language set booster boxes that they're not limited releases, so they're going to print a lot of it eventually, and they're working toward making more available after the release of April 23rd, but there's no dates specifically for like a second wave of product at this point in time.
Yeah, and I've noticed when I do my pre-order, so I usually pre-order a case of draft boosters because I play sealed at home. We like to draft. This is the first time ever since I've played this game for the last 8 years that I have had LGSs say, I am so sorry, we don't know if we can get you your product.
Right.
It's a draft booster. What do you mean? So it sounds like for this set boosters are being promoted. You have to, I believe the pre-order for your pre-release promo comes with the set booster box. So maybe it's just because we're in quarantine still, and we know that at least for this pre-release, there are still folks not getting together. And while we have been rolling out the vaccine here in the US, it's not going to be ready by the time this set hits.
Right.
Curious to see. But update real quick. I have my first vaccination, my first dose this coming Thursday. So I'm very excited. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I will be able to feel more comfortable seeing folks that are also vaccinated down the line. So I hope everybody listening is also moving along. I know a lot of folks that talk in our Discord are fully vaccinated or already got their first shot. So I feel like I'm jumping on that train. I'm very excited.
Very exciting.
Yeah. We also had another announcement, something interesting that happened with the set, maybe a little less than interesting, a little unfortunate here, is there was a statement on the new Mystical Archive art for Crux of Fate. So Wizards announced that it had come to their attention that the card Crux of Fate from Strixhaven had featured art that may not have been done by the artist. So Jason Felix, the artist, did come out and say that they wanted to make a public response. It did look like they had used some art that had come from my gosh, why can't I think of the website right now?
From DeviantArt.
Yeah. It had been lifted from DeviantArt, Kit LaPena, and then Raymond Swanland. So they spoke with them. They are looking into compensating the artists, and they hope to advocate for their names to be on the cards instead of their own. And that they were sorry this had ever happened. In Wizard's statement, they said that until this had come to really the matter had been brought to a successful conclusion, that they were going to be suspending future work with Jason Felix. So that was something that had happened and something that we had never seen before. So we shall see if we see any more art from that artist in the future.
Yeah, very unfortunate, but
yeah,
can't be doing
it. Happened. Very unfortunate. On a happy note, though, I learned how Cascade worked over the weekend.
Yeah.
We got to play on a 2-year anniversary stream with Tap That MTG with Leslie and Shauna, which was so much fun. And I played Averna the Chaos Bloom. So when you Cascade, you can put a land from among those cards that you had flipped onto the battlefield tapped. It was one of those mechanics, and it's so funny that it took me this long to learn how Cascade worked, because I never played with Maelstrom Wanderer. I never played with any of those new Cascade cards from Commander Legends. I just didn't play with them. So I finally put it together. I had a lot of fun cascading. It worked really good with Morag, Fury of Akum.
Yeah,
putting
sure
lands
does.
into play. That's real cool. So check out Tap That MTG's VOD if you want to see how the gameplay worked out. And I got to counter Coil's spell, and my counter spell had Cascade, and that felt very good.
Yeah, I got a lot of spells countered that weekend.
Okay, so it's funny because I think you said even on our own stream, it was like I knew if I didn't get rid of your spells on our own stream and on Tap That MTG stream, I was like, I'm not going to recover. You were trying to play a Nyx Bloom Ancient, and I said, not today.
That is correct. There's the Nyx Bloom Ancient. There was an Eerie Ultimatum. All my big spells got countered over the weekend. But that's okay, because that's part of the game of Magic the Gathering. Hey, Andy, I have a deck idea for you where you can continue to counter all of my spells.
You do? What is it?
So you told me that you were kind of looking for like a new CEDH deck and maybe something a little bit more unique. And
I'm going to be streaming this weekend some games. So yes, what have you got? Lay it on me.
All right, so I'm gonna give you the explanation of this deck, and I think just the explanation you're gonna fall in love. So it's a blue-white control deck.
I'm on board. Say no more.
That wins. Hold on. That wins with a combo, and that combo one of the pieces involving that combo is the enchantment Rest in Peace.
Be still my heart.
Yeah, so this is Raynar the Everwatchful, the face commander from Call Time.
Okay.
So the second ability on his card, whenever you exile one or more cards from your hand and or permanents from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. If you have a Rest in Peace out, it's a replacement effect, and the card doesn't actually die; it just gets exiled. And that would take an effect for your 1/1 white spirit. So if you have a sacrifice outlet and a 1/1 white spirit and a Rest in Peace, you can make infinite mana or have infinite enter the battlefield triggers or infinite death triggers. And there's a few different win conditions you can build around it. And the rest of the deck is blue-white control. So I figured you might like the deck.
Hey, so I should just take a deck that I talked about, I believe, on the episode last week. Yes, my Lavinia Azorius Renegade deck, and just slot in new cards. All right.
You take out the lockout combos and you just put in different win conditions, and you have the same deck. Yes.
And it already ran Rest in Peace anyway, so I mean, I'm halfway there, right?
Yeah, you got to do Rest in Peace. You need Samurai of the Pale Curtain. It's a fox.
I run
samurai.
that in my Heliod deck. I've got it.
There you go. And then Hallowed Moonlight is an instant for a 1 and a white that says, until end of turn, if a creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. So that would
sounds gross.
Yeah.
And also right up my alley.
Yeah.
And I know we were going to talk about our streams at the very end of the show, but maybe we just talk about them now because it's a really good segue. I'm going to be streaming actually with Moderately Anonymous MTG this coming Saturday at 8 p.m. You can find that on twitch.tv/Moderately Anonymous MTG, where we are going to be playing some CEDH games. So I know we talked last week. That's why Coyle brought this up, is because I might be throwing together 1 or 2 new decks to try out on the fly, because that's always fun. And Coyle, you're going to be streaming this week as well. Tell us who you're going to stream with and when.
I am streaming with CNC Power Hour on Sunday. That is going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern, Sunday, April 11th. And you can find that stream at twitch.tv/CNC Power Hour. So that should be fun. It'll be my first time on their stream. I've watched it a few times. Seems like fun. Seems like some pretty good power levels too. So I'm looking forward to it.
Their show's really, really fun. I've been on it a few times, and the music is top notch. So make sure to check out both of those streams this weekend.
Yeah. And then as kind of a final announcement. We're actually going to be making our Discord public this week. We still have a patron only channel in our Discord because we still needed to give something to our patrons. Something that we originally had promised our patrons was Discord access, but in light of the pandemic, we've opened up our Discord to the public. We've created a space specifically for the patrons within our Discord. So if you're looking to join our Discord to jam some games and you're not currently a patron of ours, you can still join our Discord, and we'll be sending that link out probably on our Twitter page, and then you'll be able to join from there.
Yeah, watch from that later this week. That should probably be out on Wednesday, the invite. So we'd love to get some more folks in there to play some games. We have a really good group in there. And then another announcement we have is that for now, our stream that every Thursday is we're going to put that on a hiatus for a bit. So we're going to be focusing on some other types of content right now. Specifically, we're going to be looking at recording content and having that edited to post that on our YouTube channel. And we really need to devote a little bit more time to that. So thank you to everyone who's been supporting us on Twitch. We're not ending the stream permanently. We're just going to put that on hiatus for a bit. It may turn into perhaps a monthly stream or something that is just on a different schedule than weekly. But stay tuned down the line because this is not the end of our content for gameplay. But if you want to support us, you can head to patreon.com/The Guardian Project Pod and donate for any dollar amount. We really appreciate everybody who supports us every week. We love you all.
Yeah, and if you're looking for another ways to support the podcast, whatever you're listening to the podcast on now, if you could leave a like or a follow. If you are listening on YouTube, you can hit that bell icon so you can get notifications whenever we upload a new content to our YouTube channel. And you can even leave a comment if you want to interact with us. We've had a lot of really great interaction on our YouTube videos, and we always like to respond to all the comments. So please leave a comment. We really appreciate all your support.
We do, and continuing our topic that we talked about last week of decks that we have taken apart, we want to hear from you. What decks have you taken apart and why? Tweet at us on Twitter with hashtag RIP. Hashtag RIP or hashtag rest and rip.
Rest and rip.
Rest and rip. We want to know what you took apart. You know, we got a lot of comments last week talking about decks that we had built, and some people said, I didn't realize that you had so many decks. I thought I was bad. Tell me about it.
And that was just part one.
And then we have this is a full agenda this week. Mm-hmm. So I think we should let her rip. So we ended talking about the oppressive decks. We are still in the middle of our oppressive deck list, or oppressive deck list. That's funny. Oppressive list of deck lists. What a tongue twister there. So the first deck that I actually have on this list is, I guess first, continuing this list, is Momir Vig, Simic Visionary. So Momir Vig is a 2/2 elf wizard for 3, a green and a blue, that says whenever you play a green creature spell, you can search your library for a creature card, reveal it. If you do, shuffle it and put it on top of your library. You shuffle your library and put it on top. And then it also says when you play a blue creature spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature spell, you can put it into your hand. So the deck itself is called Hackball. It was a competitive deck that I had built because we were trying to get into more competitive gameplay. And the deck is just real confusing. And you take one turn that takes 47 minutes, and you try to figure out what you need. And sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't because you just didn't remember what you needed to grab. And it's just a whole lot of work, I'll be honest. So to actually make the deck work, you play cards like Mind Bend and Sleight of Mind and that Whim of Volrath that we talked about in the past that I have now that I got for like 16 cents or whatever it was because It was not expensive. But so essentially you're playing a card like Mind Bend that says change the text of target permanent by replacing all instances of one color word with another, or a basic land type with another. So you change Momir Vig to say whenever you play a green creature spell, you tutor, and then instead of saying when you play a blue creature spell, you reveal the top card, you change the word blue to green. So really it becomes when you play a green creature, you tutor to the top of your library. and then you also reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. So really, Momir Vig becomes play a green creature, get a green creature. And you're really trying to combo out by playing a bunch of creatures that tap and untap a bunch of elves like Quirion Ranger, Heritage Druid, and with a mana dork, and then you're going to return cards to your hand. Nettle Sentinel untaps. You can tap it with Heritage Druid, and really you're just going to net like infinite mana and then kill your opponents, which is like really crazy. Like you can win through mill here. You use Temur Sabertooth as part of this combo. It's a really, really complex deck. Coil, I think you've played against it 2 or 3 times, and it's been a long time.
It has. I mean, I remember you buying Painter Servant for the deck because you were going to put Painter Servant Grindstone in as a combo win. It was right when Painter Servant got unbanned in Commander, in fact.
It was. So Painter Servant, that's the reason I own a copy of Painter Servant now, which I mean, it's nice that I still have one because it can be used in other decks like Whim of Volrath is pretty cool. Just putting it in a deck it's fun to have if you care about specific colors or something.
For sure. So you have this
deck came apart because of that. So long.
Yeah, because you have it under the oppressive list. So it was just about how long it took to combo off, right?
I think it was. I think so. I don't like having decks where I have to play out a turn. And part of the reason why my Orvar deck I haven't played it on stream anymore is because I find that. If you watched our stream a couple of weeks ago, I made I think it was 24 Smothering Tides total. Mm-hmm. And then I just had so much mana, like I could do anything I wanted. And it just felt bad that people were watching me play the game. It was like, well, I don't really like this. I like everybody able to play. And I try to plan out my turns ahead. And I don't know if it was just too much of a big brain deck for me, but the Momir Vig deck, it was too much. It was just too much. So you had to come apart. There's a lot of great cards in it. A lot of cards that I can just move over to other. I mean, it's like mostly elves, I'll be honest. A Temur Sabertooth is really cool to have. So it was a deck full of a bunch of like, I'm using air quotes here for like staples for a lot of other kinds of decks. And there was nothing that just didn't make sense to play anymore at all. Like maybe like Xantid Swarm is not great. It's a 0/1 insect that says when it attacks, defending player can't cast spells this turn. Might not make sense to play that in another deck, but I did run it, and now I have a copy.
Nice.
Yeah,
well, that's cool. All right, so my last deck actually on this list of oppressive decks we have here is one that when I built it, I didn't think it was very oppressive until people told me about it. And this is my Jorian Ruin Diver deck. So Jorian is a blue and a red, 2/3 merfolk wizard. It says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, draw a card. Jorian is not what made this deck oppressive. It was the card is 5 mana instant, 3 blue. It's called Evacuation. It says return all creatures to their owner's hands. This deck focused on winning with Laboratory Maniac win conditions, but I wanted to make it a point where I couldn't like mill myself for my whole deck or draw my whole deck in one fell swoop. I had to actually build my way to get there. So it required a lot of control components if I ever wanted to win. And recurring Evacuation 4 or 5 times from my graveyard to continue wiping the board so that I could get to the end game to try to win was my main win condition. And when I was playing the deck, I was like, oh, I'm playing Is It Control. This is how Is It Control works. And other people were like, we would really like to try to swing with our creatures in one of the games we play tonight. So if you could not cast Evacuation, that would be cool. And that's when I knew the deck might have been a little bit too oppressive, but without that level of control and without like instant mill or instant draw my whole deck, I don't think there's a real easy way for this deck to win. So instead of putting those instant mill or instant draw my whole deck, I decided to take the deck apart.
Yeah, I remember. And the Jorian deck came out of your Mizzix of the Is Magnus deck. So
that's correct.
It used to be that, and then you turned to Jorian. And I remember we played this you had built this not too long, I don't think before Command Fest Chicago. And we played it there because it wasn't oppressive in that it won too quickly, because it didn't. And it wasn't oppressive in that you completely controlled the board, because at least we got to play our creatures back down. I mean,
Right.
there was a thing. It was just a bounce every turn was a smidge too much for a creature deck. And I think we were trying to, I mean, clearly on the nights when most people were playing, it was like, I have to swing. If you bounce me one more time, I'm going to flip this table.
Yeah. Which means the deck did its job.
It did do its job. No, it was a very consistent deck. I mean, I won't say that I don't like it. I mean, I do tote being the Azorius player here. But I get that it's not everybody's cup of tea, and I don't bring it out very often for that exact reason.
Right.
But now I've seen it. And talking about another control deck, this is the very last deck on our oppressive list here. I did have a mono blue Baral Chief of Compliance deck. I know I heard all of you groan on the other end of the wherever you're listening in the world. I heard the collective groan. Okay. So Baral Chief of Compliance is a 1/3 human wizard for 1 and a blue that says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. And then also, whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you can draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So you get to loot, and it's cool. The deck is usually just full of counter spells. If you ever look at this deck on EDH, there's quite a few. I mean, there's as of right now, there's 725 Baral Chief of Compliance decks, and if you look at high synergy cards, you've got Unwind, Rewind, Tail's End, Mana Leak, Desertion, Dismiss, Insidious. I mean, they're all counter spells, Coyle. That's it. Hull Breacher has now been added to this deck.
Hey, that's not a counter spell.
It's not a counter spell. It's a counter draw.
That's right.
So the deck just plays control until it wins with an infinite combo. That's literally all the deck does. So I will say the reason that my Brawl deck came to be was because at our LGS, there were a lot of competitive games that were kind of creeping up, or I guess competitive decks that were creeping up, and they were being brought every week. There was a Turbo Fog deck, there was a mono black Crick, the son of Yawgmoth. I mean, it kind of was becoming combo central, and I was like, maybe I just need counter spells. So instead of just adding a few, I built a counters deck, and then it wasn't fun. I will say it just wasn't fun. Like, I mean, sure, I got to counter the spells that needed to be countered. I was playing, I wasn't playing Kingmaker, I guess, but I was definitely saying yes and no. It was like, may I play this spell, Andy? No, you may not, or yes, you may. And it's trying to determine what spells are going to really be an issue for you. Was not something a couple of years ago when I built this, was not something that I was in a position to do.
Right.
And I don't know if I want to do it now. I mean, we all know you need some counter spells, but you don't need 30 counter spells.
Right.
It's cool to have because you're probably going to have one. And I think I don't know if you played against this deck too much. I mean, in all honesty, but it was just so slow as well.
Well, I mean, it plays at the same speed as my Jorien deck, so I totally understand that. It's
like one spell a turn. Hopefully you go around the table. You might play like a Teferi Mage's Zelfir, so people can't play things at flash speed anymore. They can only play at sorcery speed. And then you're probably playing with I don't know, a lot of artifacts. So you can probably combo out by making infinite mana with Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal into something. I mean, it's entirely possible that I don't remember the exact deck list. So this was before we started archiving our decks on Archidect. And so I believe that one of my win cons was potentially just looping Blue Sun Zenith with infinite mana. You can do that. You just draw people. Yeah, you just draw them out of their deck, and then you draw. You can loot yourself if you counter something, and you can get it back pretty easily. Not what I want to be doing anymore. I've learned. I think over the last couple of years, I've learned I don't want to be playing that type of deck all the time. It's because it's only so much fun for you as well. It's really cool when you're playing in a CDH pod and you're like, I did the thing and I countered the right spell and I got there because I did the thing. Not 30 times a year.
Right. Yeah. And I guess just to put it into perspective, you said it at the beginning when you said Baral, you heard the groans. You actually heard those groans from the future, Andy. That's how bad the Baral looks like.
We did. Speaking of the future, it was from Time Spiral Remastered. Like we said last week, a lot of these commanders you can find in Time Spiral Remastered. So those groans were time shifted to my ear holes.
Time shifted groans. That's hilarious.
That should be a card. Wizards, please make time shifted groans. So now leaving oppressive. We're not, we don't have any more oppressive decks we're going to talk about. The next category here is decks where we just really didn't enjoy the play style. So the first deck that I have here is Estrid the Masked. I've talked about this on the show many times, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on this deck. But the deck played with just enchantments. I was playing land auras. I was playing creature auras. I was untapping all those things that were enchanted. I was playing with the Chain Veil, and then basically milling my graveyard and bringing it all back with Estrid all in one turn. Again, this was a lot to keep track of. It was just I would have like 50 cards on the board, and it was just too much, and it took one long turn. So that's the reason I don't play Estrid the Masked anymore.
There's two cards in particular in that deck that I felt personally I hated, and I'm glad this deck came apart.
Hold
honestly.
on, is it? I am thinking of the two cards. And go for it. What are the two?
The one, it gives all artifacts
Energy Flux.
Yeah, Energy Flux is the one, and the other one isn't it like Stasis?
Yeah. But I took that out pretty quick though.
You did.
That was mean. So I took that one out, but I did have a stasis version of it, and I'm sorry for all of those people who I played that. Yeah, Energy Flux is an artifact that says all artifacts have at the beginning of your upkeep, sack this artifact unless you pay 2 mana. So I did play that because it keeps those pesky treasures under control, but it kept a little bit too much under control.
Yeah.
So Energy Flux came out. I made it less oppressive, and I played with more of there was that card from Theros Beyond Death that when you played an enchantment, I think Archon of Sun's Grace. Yeah. So Pegasus have lifelink, and Constellation, you make a Pegasus, and it was fun. It was very fun. I'll give you that, but it was just too much happening on the board. And then you had to try and play Ghostly Prison and Propaganda, and you were playing Semi-Pillow Fort, and I was like, nah, this is too much. I'm done with this. I did it. I can say I played the Estrid deck. The playstyle is totally fine. It was just too much for me, and I, again, didn't want to play a really long turn.
Yeah, and then you traded all of your land auras to me, which was great for one of my new decks that I played, which is a very similar story to this next deck, because you traded all of the equipment and auras to me to build my SRAM Senior Edificer deck.
Yes.
So SRAM is a 2-mana 2/2 Dwarf Advisors over 1 and a white. You get this legendary creature that says whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. So this was a really, really big deal for Commander because it was a mono white commander that had you draw cards. And even in standard, maybe even in modern, there was some paradoxical outcome Cheerios decks that revolved around SRAM. In fact, that's illegal. That's legal in Pioneer, that combo right now too. So I imagine that maybe it's being played in Pioneer. But the deck just revolved around putting out as many auras and equipments as possible, drawing as many cards as possible, swinging with SRAM, and killing people with commander damage. It's a Voltron strategy with a lot of card draw. The card draw part was fun. The Voltron strategy wasn't that fun, which is why I didn't enjoy the playstyle all that much. Glad that I built it just because I got all those swords of X and Y to build some other decks with, and use all those permanents. The auras I don't really actually have very many uses for, but it was a fun deck to experience. I'm glad that Magic the Gathering and the color of white is going away from this right now. Really happy with what so far we're seeing in the Boros colors and Strixhaven, so that we can see some more unique white commanders and Boros commanders that don't have to care about combat, and we still get some card draw. So SRAM, I think, is just a ghost of the past. It was fun for a very small amount of time, and then it kind of grew old quickly.
Yeah. Similar to my that Nazan Revered Bladesmith, I think, that we talked about. I enjoyed it. I played it enough, but it was Yeah, those artifacts came from that. So the next deck here is Lord Windgrace. I just didn't enjoy playing it. Lord Windgrace is a planeswalker that costs 2 black, red, green for 5 loyalty. You can discard cards and draw cards. If you discard a land, you draw extra. You can return lands from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then you can pretend that the -11 doesn't exist on Lord Windgrace because no one has ever used the destroy up to 6 creatures, and then they get cats with Forest Walk. But it's part of the card, if you didn't know. I did play this deck for quite a while. It was a deck that I'd opened the precon and I said, well, let's just add the cards that I have to it. I mean, I had a Crucible of Worlds. Lotus Cobra was reprinted a couple of times. Scoot Swarm is cool. But the problem was I have an Omnath Locus of Rage deck that is still together, that I still love. It's a landfall deck that makes elementals. And the way that I built Lord Windgrace was I built landfall, but I got to add black. So I really got to add like the Gitrog monster for value. I got to add Windgrace's Judgment or Worm Harvest, where you get to retrace and create worms for each land in your graveyard. To be honest, I didn't utilize the black all that much. I mostly played red-green landfall, but now it was Lord Windgrace, so it was too similar to another deck, and I didn't want to continuously fog everybody by playing the land that just constantly fogs. And I am not remembering the name of the land right now.
Glacial Chasm.
Glacial Chasm. So I played a Glacial Chasm in that deck, and then you sack it and you bring it back constantly, and it was cool because Coil couldn't swing at me that one game I remember with your Galta deck. Mm-hmm. So it came apart because I play Omnath Locus of Rage instead. That's why.
I like to point to that moment similarly to when we talk about how our play group started playing with Graveyard Hate, because I play with so much Graveyard. That deck made it so that I actually put a little bit of land destruction in some of my decks. Targeted land destruction. Targeted.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So cool there. Okay, so my next deck is annoying. It's a Loro Ageless Ascetic. I'm sure everyone's played against an Loro deck before, and I'm sure everyone's been annoyed about, hey, I know literally no one's played a permanent yet, but I'm gonna go to 42 life. All right, now let's start the game. So my Loro deck was only artifacts. It was an artifact deck. I literally never casted a Loro. I didn't even really have... I think I had an Aetherflux Reservoir in the deck. That was probably the only card in the entire deck that actually synergized with life gain. Everything else was just artifacts, and Alora was the commander because I knew that if I was going to have a commander just for colors, why not have one that gains me life every single turn? Sure. And the reason that the deck came apart is because I didn't really have a fine-tuned strategy other than Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge is a win condition, and that would still take a few turns. He has an activation where each opponent loses life equal to the number of artifacts you control, and then you gain life equal to the number of artifacts you control. You don't gain life equal to life they lost. I phrased it incorrectly. But that was pretty much the only main win condition, and the only way I was getting there was trying to take infinite turns with a time sieve. And it was pretty inconsistent. It got to a point where like I could take 6 extra turns and then nothing happened and I had to pass.
That did happen. I remember that.
And that was pretty much the moment that it's like, okay, I either need to fine tune this so that it wins better, in which case, or wins faster, in which case I'd have to play it in a higher power level, or I need to take it apart. And it has, I mean, artifacts you can use in any deck. So this deck came apart just so I could use it in so many other different decks that I have now.
Right. Right. My next deck here is Duretti Scrap Savant. So I did build a mono red deck. This is the Planeswalker that allows you to discard 2 cards, draw that many cards, or you can discard up to 2 cards. You can sack an artifact to return an artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then you can get an emblem with whenever an artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So I really wanted to play around with this. Scrap Mastery is just a living death really for artifacts in red. It's a really fun card. Goblin Welder's a great card. Trash for Treasure is really cool. Trash for Treasure says as an additional cost, you sack an artifact to return an artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ugin the Ineffable, when War of the Spark came out, it made colorless spells cost less since I'm playing a lot of artifacts. I was like, this is really great. This is so cool. And then I tried out the Karn the Great Creator and Mycosynth Lattice Lock, and I did that once and felt bad for everybody, including myself, because it was just miserable, But like I say, it's easier to speak to things that you have done than to do hypotheticals of things that you've seen or have read about. It's a terrible feeling. Karn and Mycosynth Lattice is a terrible feeling. I did not like it because I remember you and my husband, there was someone else at the table, and you all looked at me, you're like, so we're done playing the game? And I was like, I guess. Yeah. And that's how the conversation went. It felt horrendous. Yes. So this deck came apart. It's very consistent. You're just looping a bunch of stuff. The deck is great. If you would like to play it, the deck is great. I didn't like the play style, so that's why I took apart Duretti.
Yeah, there's even a CEDH version of Duretti that uses stacks and smokestacks and all that kind of stuff. And I know one of the combos is Meteor Goleming infinite times and destroying every single one of your opponent's permanents. So if that's something you're looking to do, that deck does it really well, actually.
Right.
Okay, so the next deck that I have is one that I was super, super excited for when I built it, actually. And Andy, you and I actually built this together in Colorado. And this is Lazav the Multifarious. This is a deck that you still currently have, in fact.
I do. I love my version of this deck.
Yeah, so this is for a blue and a black, you get a 1/3 shapeshifter. It says when Lazav the Multifarious enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. Then you can pay X, and Lazav the Multifarious becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with mana value equal to X. Except its name is Lazav the Multifarious. It's legendary in addition to other types, and it has this ability. So when this card first got released, Andy and I were actually taking a little trip in Colorado. Andy was doing it for work. I was doing it for fun. And this card came out, and one day we just had a couple drinks, and we just put out a quick deck list for it. And I ended up building it, and this thing had like 7 different win conditions in it, which made it really inconsistent because you could never actually get the right ones. I had every single tutor possible in it and a lot of mana, so I instantly became the arch enemy whenever I sat down at a table. And this deck really only kills one person at a time, so you really don't want to be arch enemy. So this deck, like, I put everything I could into this deck. I lost every game hard with this deck, and I said I don't want it anymore, and I got rid of it. But that mana base was super important for a bunch of other decks that I built. The graveyard shenanigans I already had. Blue counter spells were nice to have for my collection, so I'm glad I built the deck to get all the staples. But something I thought I was going to love and ended up hating.
I know. And then for the longest time, I begged you for your foil version. You said, no, I opened it. I love it. It's my favorite character in all of Magic lore. And then you finally traded it to me. And now I have my own shiny Lazav the Multifarious pre-release version.
That's right. That's right.
Wonderful. So my next deck here, Edgar Markov. This is the pre-con face commander, 3 black, white, and red for a 4/4 vampire knight that says Eminence. When you cast another vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is on the battlefield or in the command zone, you create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. And then it has first strike and haste. And whenever Edgar Markov attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. The deck is perfectly fine. There's 3,587 decks at the time of recording this on EDH Rec. It is in the top. I mean, this is a really, really popular commander. Tribal's great. Vampire, there's a ton of them. We're going back to Innistrad this year. We're going to get a lot of new and very cool vampires. I just didn't want to be playing this tribal deck. I felt that it was a tribal deck that required you to really rely on swinging hard and fast. I mean, you needed to be out the gate swinging, and I think I do like the tribal decks that give you a smidge more time. Like Minotaurs, yes, you need to be swinging hard and fast, but at least you can give them menace. I think they're an underplayed tribe. Maybe that's why. I know that we tend to stray away from the decks that are the most popular decks in the format because we see them so often. Maybe that's why, but overall, I needed more pieces from, like, I think the mana base that I had was pretty expensive, and I wanted to just try new things. It wasn't my favorite thing, so I ultimately took apart Edgar. But if you're looking for a vampire deck, A lot of people say that Edgar's really the way to go because you get to use all the colors for your vampires.
Yeah, I think even more so, you talked about Innistrad coming out this year, going to have a lot of vampire support, but even the +1/+1 counter synergy going into black-white right now in Strixhaven is really, really strong for vampires too. I am interested to see, I wanted to talk about it next week, but I think, we're talking vampires, that I think vampires is going to be a very strong combination with the, I'm losing the name of the black-white school in Strixhaven right now.
Silverquill?
Yeah, Silverquill. I think Silverquill combined with vampires is going to be very strong in standard, and I'm curious to see what it's going to bring to Commander as a combination too.
All right. I'm looking forward to that.
All right, so next deck. This one is actually, I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit. We do have a section where we're going to talk about later with the chopping block, but these ones are kind of they're pretty much taken apart. Not quite. I could put them right back together right now, but Firesong and Sunspeaker is my next deck that's going to come completely apart. This is my Boros Spellslingers deck. So Firesong and Sunspeaker is a 6-mana 4/6 Minotaur Cleric. So 4 red and a white. It says red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Firesong and Sunspeaker deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Most people, when they build their deck, they actually don't put any life gain strategy into it at all. It's all pinging damage because you're going to gain life from pinging anyways. I originally built this deck as a $50 budget Boros deck, which actually, for a $50 Boros deck, it is pretty darn good. Age of Extinction is an absolutely... Star of Extinction is an absolutely amazing spell in this deck that'll put you, past thousands of life sometimes. So very cool deck that has spells that go off. If I put some more money into it, it could become more consistent. 6 mana is a lot of mana to get down, especially for a budget commander. So this one, I'm probably going to end up turning it into a Toralf God of Fury deck. Because I haven't seen one yet. I'm sure it's very popular. I'm sure a lot of people have built it, but that's the mono red God from Call Time for 4 mana. You get a 5/4 trampler. It says whenever a creature, planeswalker, an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Toralf deals damage equal to the excess to any other target other than that permanent. So using all of the damage spells from my Firesong and Sunspeaker deck, I was going to build up a Toralf deck, and maybe I will find some life gain deck to put my white spells into.
Yeah, no, Firesong and Sunspeaker is really fun. I enjoyed playing against it, but I can see how it would, you've done it, you did the thing, and wanted to try something new. My next deck here is Enet Cryptic Sovereign. So this is the 3/5 Sphinx from the 2018 precons. This was in the Aminatu deck. So for 2, a white, blue, and a black, it has Flying, Vigilance, Menace, and whenever it attacks, you reveal a top card of your library. If that card's converted mana cost is odd, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, you draw a card. So this is top deck manipulation. You wanted to play odd CMC cards in the deck. The deck, it was a little slow for me. It's a lot of mana that you have to put into Enet, and then you're trying to get the most bang for your buck. So you're playing a bunch of other expensive spells in Garruk's Wake, Void Winnower, Artisan of Kozilek. You don't play just all the Eldrazi, but you're playing like Diluvian Primordial, Mind's Dilation. Mind's Dilation says whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn, they exile the top card of their library. If it's a non-land card, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. The problem is it's just the deck, it was hit or miss because sometimes you would just draw all of your expensive cards and not really do a whole lot. Or with Virtual Commander, playing cards that cared about other people's decks was difficult. Yeah. We all now have Infinite tokens. We have our own Guardian Project tokens that we use. And we send those off to patrons. So it became easier, but for that reason, I just was overplaying the deck. Very popular. It's just under 1,000. It just wasn't for me.
Yep. No, makes sense. Next deck on here is actually one of the first decks that I built when we went into quarantine, when Commander 2020 came out, and that's Otrimi, the Ever Playful. This is a Sultai Nightmare Beast with Mutate, 4 mana to mutate, 1 black, green, blue. It's a 6/6 trampler. It says whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, return target creature card with Mutate from your graveyard to your hands. This was a face commander for the Sultai, again, Commander 2020 Mutate deck. I decided that I wanted to build it. We started streaming right around this time. I thought it would be a really cool, unique Sultai deck. It's one of the first times I really developed a really good Sultai mana base. And it was very, very strong deck for what it did, but it was very Voltron heavy again, pretty much trying to just make Otrimi unblockable so that I could get in for commander damage and then reap the benefits from mutate triggers, and that was the whole deck. But if you know me, you know that Sultai is one of my favorite color combinations, if not my favorite color combination in Magic the Gathering, and the only Sultai commander deck other than Otrimi that I had built was my Yarick energy deck. So in order to build my favorite color combination and a brand new deck that hopefully I'll be playing this weekend on CNC Power Hour, I had to take this deck apart in order to get its mana base. So rest in peace, Otrimi.
Rest in peace, Otrimi. And then ending this segment on we did not enjoy the playstyle, or this category, is Kadena Slinking Sorcerer. So I had tweeted about decks I was going to take apart at the end of last year, and it was funny because I immediately got responses that said, take Kadena apart. That one is, I think there's a lot of other people that are just like, this deck is not that fun. Mm-hmm. So Kadena Slinking Sorcerer is the Morph Commander from Commander 19. It's the face commander of that Sultai deck, and it says, it's a 3/3 Naga Wizard for 1 black, green, blue, that says the first face down creature you cast each turn costs 3 colorless less to cast. And then whenever a face down creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can draw a card. It was cool for a bit because you got to play with a bunch of those morph cards and megamorph cards that got reprinted. There were cards that came down in price, old cards that became very, very popular. It's a lot to remember because all of your cards are also face down. And then you have to remember, what was this one that I put face down?
Right.
Which was this? You're playing like old cards. Dream Chisel, an artifact that says face down creature spells, cost 1 color less to play. Mystic Forge from M20 was really cool because you can look at the top card of your library and you can cast the top card if it's colorless. Or if it's an artifact or a colorless non-land card. Vidalcan Orrery is really cool here. It was, again, similar to Estrid, a lot to remember. You had a lot going on the board, and I played it a few times, didn't really enjoy it, took it apart. So that was it for Kadena. The next section here, the plan really never came together or didn't do enough. So I tried for a long time to make Ixava Rakdos Bloodwitch work. So Ixava is a human cleric for 2 black-red. It's a 3/3 from Dragon's Maze that says first strike, haste, unleash. So unleash is a mechanic we don't normally see in Commander because it says you can have this creature enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. It cannot block if it has a counter on it, and or a +1/+1 counter on it. Mm-hmm. And then each other creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has haste. So you could just probably play creatures with haste. It's better than trying to work around getting a counter onto it to give it haste. You're playing in a color that, sure, it can reanimate, but it doesn't, it's not, this strategy was not the best strategy. The plan never really came together. I got mana screwed a few times, even though we know the mana base was not an issue. Mm-hmm. There were like 37 lands, a bunch of rocks, and a bunch of things to do stuff with. Ultimately, I had tweeted just a couple of weeks ago saying, I want to put this back together with all the fast mana. I want to put in a Grim Monolith. I want to put in a Mana Crypt. I want to put Soul Ring. I want to put it all. See what I can do with it. I may do it for one last hurrah, but Ixava Rakdos Bloodwitch didn't really do anything. So it got the axe.
Allow me to retort with a Rakdos deck of myself.
Oh.
I built from Dominaria a very unpopular commander. In fact, I've never seen another one before. And this is Kazarov Sengir Pureblood. This is a legendary vampire with flying. It's a 4/4 for 7 mana, so 5 black. It says whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt damage, put a +1/+1 counter on Kazarov Sengir Pureblood, and you can pay 3 in a red, and Kazarov deals 2 damage to target creature. So this entire deck was built around basically doing like 1 damage to every creature on the board, put like 20 +1/+1 counters on Kazarov, and then swing. And the one thing that really held it back is Kazarov costs 7 mana. That is ridiculous.
It was really expensive.
Yeah, so I didn't have like a super expensive mana base or anything. I think I got him out onto the battlefield a couple times, board wiped a couple times, maybe killed a person or two, but it never, like I never Chandra's Ignition, Kazarov or anything like that. I was never able to win a game with it. It did a couple fun things. Ultimately, we have a lot of people in our play group that play a lot of low to the ground creatures and stuff, and it ends up just being constant board wipes all the time too, so it wasn't that fun for those players, but that one got taken apart, and now it is a Scorpion God -1/-1 counters deck.
Yes. My next deck here, Maloku the Clouded Mirror. This is a 2/4 Moonfolk Wizard for 4 and a blue that has flying, and pay 1, return a land you control to its owner's hand, put a blue illusion creature token onto the battlefield with flying. If you've seen our video from our trip to Command Fest Chicago, this entire deck list was actually previewed on there. I flipped through it really quickly, so that was really fun to do. The whole deck was built because of Mystic Sanctuary when that card came out. Mystic Sanctuary enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more islands, and if you do control 3 or more islands, you can put, or if it enters, I guess, untapped, you can put target instant sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library. So the goal is play control until you can get enough where you can return the Mystic Sanctuary, play it back down, and then basically you're just going to go to town by looping infinite turn spells. And then, but the problem is you make a 1/1 blue illusion creature token with flying, and then you spend a million turns trying to get enough to swing out. It just took too long. It was fun to try. I'm done with it. So it came apart.
Mystic Sanctuary now available in Time Spiral Remastered Old Border. Next commander that I want to talk about is my first Grixis commander, and that's Lord of Tressorhorn. So Lord of Tressorhorn is a 1 blue, black, red. You get a 10/4 zombie. So 4 mana, you get a 10/4. It says when Lord of Tressorhorn comes into play, you lose 2 life and sacrifice 2 creatures, and an opponent draws 2 cards. You can pay 1 black to regenerate Lord of Tressorhorn. So this was one of the first. Again, I know I've said it a lot. It's one of the first decks I ever built. This is the very first Grixis deck I ever built, and it was centered around a zombie theme, actually. So it was Grixis zombies. I took a lot of people when they build Lord of Tressorhorn, they put like a Torpor Orb or something into their deck so that they don't get the enter the battlefield effect from Lord of Tressorhorn, since it is a negative effect. I instead decided to just be able to get 2 creatures out on the battlefield so that Lord of Tressorhorn will stay alive. I had a couple fun things in there, like putting Wonder into the graveyard and then giving Lord of Tressorhorn +1/+1 double strike to try to kill people. It was fun. I think I would have even more fun if I built it today, honestly, because it's still a very unique commander. I still own my copy of Lord of Tressorhorn, so maybe it'll come back together, but I was never really able to win games with it, just eliminate a few people, but I was early in Commander. I was just trying to have fun at that point.
Absolutely. The next deck that I have lands solidly in the it did not do enough. This is also the most affordable deck that I have ever seen built. This is Ashling the Pilgrim. It is a 1/1 for 1 and a red. It's an elemental shaman that says pay 1 and a red, put a +1/+1 counter on Ashling the Pilgrim. If this is the 3rd time this ability has resolved this turn, remove all of those +1/+1 counters from Ashling the Pilgrim, and it deals that much damage to each creature and each player. So I built Ashling the Pilgrim in 99 mountains. I walked up to our LGS and I asked for 99 mountains. They were like, are you serious right now? And I said, yeah, I just want to try it. And it was suggested to me. It was ridiculous. It didn't do enough, but you know, when you put like 8 counters on Ashling the Pilgrim and then you remove it, you're board wiping. You're always going to get your land drops because there's only land drops. Obviously you can improve it, but maybe we should do a segment on cheapest commander deck, and maybe I bring this out for one more game.
That's pretty good. We could do that.
It actually is. The deck works with just mountains, which is the most ridiculous part of the whole thing.
Yeah, there's actually a game type that was played at Command Fest Chicago called Turbo Commander, where every turn, instead of drawing 1 card, you just draw up to 7. And we talked about just going over there with this deck because you could, and it allowed you to play any number of lands per turn too. So you could just go in there, lay 7 lands down every single turn, and just get Ashling out there. And it would have been a meme, but it would have been fun.
Exactly.
So this next deck is my Atris Oracle of Half-Truths deck. So this is a Dimir Reanimator deck for 2 blue and a black. You get a 3/2 Human Advisor with Menace that when it enters the battlefield, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. I built this deck in January of 2020, and you know how difficult this card is to resolve for webcam magic?
I do. We tried it once.
That's why this deck is no longer together.
Yeah. And my last one here in this section is Nakara, Lair Scavenger, and Yannick Scavenging Sentinel. These are the keyword counter commanders. They're fun. They just didn't do enough. I got to do the thing with the Ozolith. I got to do the thing with looping with the moth. Oh gosh, that's the what is that? Luminous Broodmoth.
Yep.
The deck it's silly, it's fun. It just didn't do enough. It's not consistent. I do not think that it really is easy to stand up on its own in most pods, because you need like 6 or 7 cards working together to make the whole plan come together, and it's not always realistic. So that's why I took that deck apart.
Yeah. And then the last deck that I actually wanted to talk about here, it's kind of in a different subject. This is one that it just didn't. I think we phrased it didn't spark joy. It wasn't happy. It did not make us feel happy when we were playing it. And this one, I only had one deck for this, and that's the Gitrog monster. So it's a 3 black and a green frog horror, 6/6 with Death Touch that says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster. Unless you sacrifice a land, you can play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. I remember going over to Andy's house with this deck before Command Fest Chicago and I say, hey, can I try out this deck with you for a second? And I think you took 2 turns, and then I took 30 minutes to win the game after that. And it's a solitaire deck. It doesn't have a whole lot of interaction. So even in CEDH, it's like, hopefully I can play a spell that makes it so my stuff can't get countered, but I'm not countering your stuff or anything. So low interaction, very solitaire. It wasn't that much fun. So that's why the deck came apart.
Right. So we have a couple more commanders just listed here. Let's list off these commanders that we didn't go into too much detail. Most of these we really only played once or twice. They like you said, maybe it didn't spark joy. We can just mention them here. So I had Tolzamir, Friend to Wolves, Nahiri the Lithomancer. I played the mono white deck for a bit. Zalortha Strength Incarnate. I built a budget version to play with the Scrap Trawlers. That was a lot of fun. The deck absolutely strong, and you know what, I might not have given it a fair shake, and I just tweeted it got a couple of new cards that might be really strong, so I might have to circle back to that. Anawan the Rune Sage, mono black Anawan that made vampire tribal kind of a thing a long time ago. And then I have Tiborn Lumia, Izzet, Amara Soul of the Accord, Rona Disciple of Gix, Heliod Suncrown, and Niv Mizzet Reborn. I have too many decks. That is the real story here. I just needed to cut some of them down so I can build new decks. So, Coyle, do you have any others that you just wanted to mention that you have taken apart or no longer play?
Yeah, I had a Cranko 10th Street Kingpin. That was kind of just cool because it was a Cranko that wasn't the other Cranko. I had a Trostani, the original Trostani, Populate. That one got turned into Risk the Redeemed because I wanted more tokens, not less tokens. I had a Ramos Lucky Charms deck. It was just all charms. That one took too long to read all the cards. That's why that one got taken apart. If you could tell,
you had like 7 options on every card.
Literally 3 options on every single spell in the deck, and I didn't know what any of them did. So that one was just me putting a pile of cards together, and it took too long to do nothing. So that's why that one came apart. But I think that's about it for me. I think combined between my household and because we have 2 people building decks here that we share versus I can see why we would have a couple more here, but I think what we've learned from these 2 episodes is that we've had a lot of fun building a lot of different decks, trying out a bunch of different strategies, and I don't think we're going to slow down. I'll be honest. We're just going to have a lot more that we can talk about, which is great because we want to be able to speak about it, honestly and from experience. That's right.
Yeah. So I think that's it for this week. We want to thank you all for listening. If you want to contact us, you can find our podcast on Twitter at Guardian Pod. And you can find our gameplay videos on YouTube at youtube.com/GuardianProject. You can find our website at theguardianprojectpodcast.com. or you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at atflory.
And I'm on Twitter at wormcoilengine. And of course, we want to give a special thanks to our producer, Ryan Nichols. Thank you so much. And Chris Wolf, who handles all of our graphic design. Thank you so much. And we will chat with you all next week.
We will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Strixhaven next week. Yay!
We're going back to school.
Oh, boo.